So you will be doing the presentation, and we will just say next slide. That's it.
No, please. You can share your screen. I will just say now the just instructions. Will be much better than to run from our side.
Okay.
But, yeah.
No, just to
so
be sure.
You will have the full control on it.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Okay. So we start. Have most of participants already admitted. So welcome all to ENSP-ECTC webinar. It's as a part of ENSP-ECTC series of webinars, part of the ENSP conference. We have today the topic of introducing a human rights aspect to tobacco control on the way to tobacco endgame. So as we all know that the human rights rhetoric became universally defined with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948. So specifically related to health with the right to standard of living adequate for health and well-being of himself and his family, including food, clothing, housing, and medical care and necessary social services. So throughout the FCTC, there is an explicit priority to protect the public health from the very first line of the FCTC preamble. The treaty asserts determination to give priority to the right to protect public health. So a central priority of the FCTC is to protect right to health from third parties that may be endangering the right when tension arises between the right to health and other rights or interests. The FCTC prioritizes the protection of public health. So if we will link FCTC provision with existing human rights obligations, we will find that the strengthening of the FCTC implementation will lead to the protection of people's rights to live healthy life, which is correspondence with the Sustainable Development Goal 3 and the obligation of the states to the public. So the right to health is recognized by numerous and global and regional human rights instruments, organizations. So human rights approach to ending the tobacco epidemic is unique and could help overcome the challenge in FCTC implementations. So we will start our webinar with the presentation of human rights and tobacco control mutually reinforcing approach to advance health. The field of human rights provides numerous platforms to promote the FCTC and advance health. But also the FCTC is a best practice tool that helps countries to protect the health of the citizens. This presentation will provide an introduction on how to incorporate a human-based approach to accelerate healthy human rights and SDG objectives. Laurent Huber will make this presentation. Laurent Huber, most of us, if not all of us, know him as now Executive Director for ASH International based in Washington, D.C. and former General Director for Framework Convention Alliance and one of the very active advocates on the field of tobacco control in the world. Laurent, the floor is yours. Please start the presentation.
Thank you. And I'm going to share my screen. And here we go. I hope this works. I hope you can see it. Can you see it well and you hear me well? So this presentation, as Hani mentioned, it's about demonstrating the mutually reinforcing of nature, so to speak, of human rights and tobacco control and the FCTC. But I think it's also worth mentioning human rights on the way to endgame, given that, in my opinion, at least, a human rights interpretation of the impact of what the tobacco industry does on the right to life and health really is a way to justify and promote endgame strategies at country level in order to protect the health of our citizens. So I think that there's a strong connection between human rights and human rights-based approach to advance endgame. And a lot of you have heard me say that quite often, but we're so fortunate in tobacco control because it's one of the health issues where we're so fortunate to have a treaty. We have very strong guidelines on to help countries implement the treaty. We have the protocol. On top of that, tobacco is being front and center at the high-level meeting political fora that have taken place in New York. And it's included also tobacco front and center in the Global Action Plan on NCDs and also in the SDGs. So we all know that we're extremely fortunate. However, there is another very, very strong tool that we have not used quite as much. We've used it a little bit, but not quite as much as the human rights platform and human rights mechanisms that can really help promote the implementation of the FCTC. And I think we need to clarify, what do we talk about when we talk about human rights? And when we talk about human rights, we talk about the rights that have been recognized at the highest level of international law. So those are the rights that have been basically integrated in human rights treaties that have been adopted by most of our countries, and particularly European countries. And there's, the right to life, the right to health, and there's other rights, the right to education, the right to information, the right to a healthy environment. And there's also groups of people who are particularly protected: children, racial minorities, indigenous population, women, and so on and so forth. So we're dealing with both the rights that have been recognized at the highest level of international law, and then some individual groups that are particularly protected under international human rights law, as well as national law. And the argument is fairly simple, actually, is that, so we recognize that everyone has the right to life and health, and governments have a duty to enforce those rights. Human rights is really about the relationship between the citizens and governments, and also between governments and governments among themselves, is what they agree at the higher level in international treaties. And then, so if we follow this argument, governments have the right to protect the health of their citizens and citizens in general from the harms caused by the tobacco industry. If they don't, so if the government does not behave appropriately and take the adequate steps to protect the health of the citizens, there are legal remedies. And basically, there are legal actions that you can take at the international, regional, and national level. And there's more so with human rights treaties than we have, for example, with the FCTC, given that the FCTC does not have a strong enforcement mechanism. So this is basically the early argument. And then one of the reasons why we can make this argument in the context of tobacco, there's a number of rights, as I mentioned earlier, that can be affected by tobacco. But the right to health is a right that has been recognized in numerous international human rights treaties. So the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 25, and there's the one we quote all the time in the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights is Article 12, which recognizes the right of everyone to the enjoyment of the highest attainable standard of physical and mental health. But it's also the right to health is recognized in the International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination, Article 5, the Convention of the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, Article 12, the Convention on the Right of the Child in its Article 24, the Covenant on the Rights of the Persons with Disability, Article 25, as well as numerous international treaties, and in the context of Europe, it's important because it's Article 11 of the European Charter, Social Charter. So, right to health, highly recognized in human rights treaties. And the FCTC, conversely also, then recognized the right, human rights in its Article 12. So while the FCTC, it's a health treaty, is not a human rights treaty in the sense that it was not ratified by the human rights body. It was negotiated and adopted through a health body, through the World Health Assembly. But it recognizes in its Article 12, in the preamble of the FCTC, Article 12 of the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, and the right to everyone to enjoy the highest attainable standard of physical and mental health. So the connection is there between the FCTC and the right to health. And we have something very similar to what we have with the guidelines of the FCTC with international human rights treaties. What we have is general comments that become authoritative interpretations of what countries must do to adequately implement a given article in a human rights treaty. So with the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, there's General Comment 14, which addresses Article 12, which is the right to health. And this, for some reason my computer is frozen. So within these guidelines, basically the equivalent of the guidelines, the general comment, state that governments must discourage the use of tobacco. And failure to discourage the production, marketing, and consumption of tobacco is a violation of Article 12 of this treaty. And also failure to take the necessary measures to safeguard against third parties. So for example, in not taking adequate action to protect against the tobacco industry would be a violation to the right to health. So the guidelines on this treaty provide elements that can be used to strengthen further implementation of the FCTC at national level. And all of the European countries are bound to this international human rights treaty and report back to it on a regular basis. The Committee on the Rights of the Child, similarly, that's again a treaty that is very important to Europeans, ratified by all European nations, EU nations. And in this General Comment 15, which is again the guidelines for the implementation of the right to health article in the Convention on the Rights of the Child, it calls on countries that states are required to introduce international law standards, agreed standards concerning the right to health of children, including the WHO Framework Convention on Tobacco Control. So basically, not adequately implementing the FCTC is a violation of the right to health in the context of the Convention on the Protection of Children, Convention on the Right of the Child. Then it's also worth reminding that the Human Rights Council, the principal body that governs and looks at the progress that countries make towards achieving human rights objectives. A resolution was adopted on a few years ago on the right to health. That was in 2017 on the right to health and the achievement of the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals on the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. And in this resolution adopted unanimously by the Human Rights Council and endorsed by numerous European countries, the resolution urges states to work towards the full implementation of health targets in the SDGs, including Target 3A, and calls on countries to accelerate and strengthen the implementation of the FCTC. So the World Health Assembly is starting to look at the connection between tobacco and human rights. Then also worth remembering that the UN, the Human Rights Council, had unanimously adopted the guiding principles on business and human rights. And those, while not legally binding, requires that business enterprises avoid causing or contribute adverse human rights impacts. And clearly with tobacco, they do. And this is important because most European countries have developed national plans on living up and being compliant with the UN guiding businesses on principles on human rights. If you go just to the website of the Human Rights Council, you can find them. And we do not use those. So it'd be important for us to use those plans, given that the European countries have made a commitment to live up to those standards. And when we look about what's the view on some human rights bodies, you all remember probably the Danish Institute for Human Rights, which came to the conclusion that there can be no doubt that the production and marketing of tobacco is irreconcilable with the human rights to health, and that for the tobacco industry, the UN guiding principles on business and human rights therefore require the cessation of the production and marketing of tobacco. So this basically kind of promotes that concept of an end game, suggesting that to really fully protect the right to health, countries should really consider whether we should phase out the sale of tobacco products, for example, to protect the right to health of our citizens. So basically, in this case, the Danish Institute for Human Rights came to the conclusions that by selling an addictive and lethal product like cigarettes, what the company did amounted to be a human rights violation. And this basically was also reinforced by civil society. You all probably remember the Cape Town Declaration on Human Rights in a Tobacco-Free World, in which civil society agreed that the manufacture, marketing, and sale of tobacco is incompatible with the human right to health. And they also, in the point 11, Article 11 of that resolution, of that declaration, adopted at the last World Conference, also suggest that the cessation and marketing, in order to an appropriate remedy framework require the cessation of the manufacture and marketing of tobacco products. And so Clearly, we can use a human rights approach to accelerate the FCTC implementation in different ways. One is to create new partnerships with civil society and governments. It's something there's been a bit of a silo up to now between civil society, between tobacco control and NCD prevention and human rights. This was very much noted, for example, when I attended the Human Rights Council, where I see the HIV/AIDS community very, very active in using this platform, but the NCD tobacco control community not yet. So it's an opportunity to provide new partnerships with child rights groups, environmental groups, women rights groups. For communication and education, reframing tobacco control in a different way, under a different light, and again, with a new message that can be appealing. For advocacy purposes at country level, for policy legislation and regulation, to promote new policies, and in the context of endgame legislation, a human rights-based approach does justify going further. As Denius Porras stated in the introduction to the book Human Rights on Tobacco Control, he stated that the FCTC enshrines the minimum standards in the context of what should be done on tobacco control. So, we can go beyond the FCTC. And legal action, and you'll hear more about that from Kurt in a little bit. And for accountability and reporting, and that's quite important because the FCTC does not have a strong accountability and reporting process in place yet. So we can use the reporting mechanisms that are associated with human rights treaties that all of our European countries have to do, or have to basically report to those European treaties, just human rights treaties on a regular basis. And as civil society, we have the opportunity to submit parallel reports, which will become then part of the official process and can then encourage countries to do more around tobacco control, but also to frame the FCTC as a best practice tool to achieve human rights objectives as well as development objectives. So a lot can be done in that area, and particularly can be done using the Universal Periodic Review, which every 4 years countries report. There's different timelines, but European countries report on a regular basis, or the treaty monitoring bodies associated with the various human rights treaties that our countries have ratified. And given that our region has ratified most human rights treaties, there are a number of reporting opportunities for us to make sure that we include tobacco. We started doing those, and you probably have heard some of this, but there's been great work that Laura Green, for example, has done in Germany, where they developed a report, and out of that, then they called for advocacy for stronger policies on advertising bans. And this is a tool that really we should utilize a lot more, and I really encourage you to use the expertise of people like Laura Green and apply it for the practical approach at the local level. Lastly, I don't want to take too much time, but I want us to remind us that there's an opportunity also to strengthen the link between the FCTC and human rights. There had been a draft decision that had been proposed at the last conference of the parties on protecting on human rights and the impact of and the FCTC, the contribution of the WHO FCTC to the promotion and fulfillment of human rights. Unfortunately, it did not go through, mostly because of procedural issues, but it is again on the agenda for the next COP. A proposal is being made again by Ecuador, and we need to make sure that this does get approved this time and passes through. And our message really is that by adopting a human rights decision, basically the FCTC, the messages that the FCTC and the implementation of the FCTC at national level, and the global strategy to accelerate the tobacco control, which was the strategy adopted at the last COP, the implementation of that strategy at country level is a best practice tool to help countries achieve NCD, the NCD Global Action Plan at country level, achieve sustainable development goals at country level, and also achieve human rights objective. And this decision at the next COP does not put any more obligation on countries. So we really encourage all countries in the EU to support that at the next COP. And lastly, to conclude, this was an article that was published in early January of this year on human rights and global health governance, and his work was by Benjamin Messenmeyer, Margarita Mariana Sina, and Lawrence Gustin, who's one of the leading experts in human rights law and health and global health. And they came to the conclusion that human rights really provide a unifying framework for global health governance. And I think there's some truth to that. We can really use that as a framework to help us accelerate all of the already wonderful tools that we have for the FCTC, for tobacco control, such as the FCTC, the protocol, the guidelines, but using a human rights framework to put more pressure on governments to accelerate the implementation of the FCTC. And it's really up to us to use it. I really like this quote from one of the most famous Canadian hockey players, who said, "You miss 100% of the shots you do not take." And unfortunately, as a tobacco control community, we often have not used a human rights platform to advance our tobacco control. And the opportunities are really there for us to use that. And I encourage all of you to use them. And I'll be open for questions after when it's time for Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you, Laurent. Actually, yes, as you mentioned, the FCTC and other tobacco control instruments, it's very important for the topic with the human rights, because the implementation of these instruments, it's most of them, especially for the FCTC, that is very clear, have been particularly neglected. And even we can notice that with Article 14, the tobacco cessation provision. So now we'll go to the next presentation on human rights and tobacco control, an instrument for legislation, jurisprudence, and awareness campaigns. So human rights and tobacco control go hand in hand. Human rights can be invoked in the parliament, in the court of law, or even when it comes to awareness campaign. Kurt Anendik the policy advisor at COMMITEE. I hope that I pronounced it very well.
It was close.
Yeah. So, Kurt, doing the public affairs in the field of early detection of cancer, prevention, care, and the treatment, and when it comes to smoking, this organization is a part of the Alliance of Smoke-Free Society in Belgium. Kurt, please, you can start your PowerPoint now.
Okay. So I hope you can see my screen now.
Yes.
First of all, who are we? We are an organization against cancer. If you translate it, it's Stand Up to Cancer. We are an independent NGO and a non-profit organization. We are a rights-driven organization. We stand up for the rights of cancer patients and for the right of a healthy environment. And we play a leading role in the fight against cancer in Flanders by preventing and fighting cancer and by advocating better cancer policy. These are just a few screenshots. Here you see our president, our director, a few actions we do. But if you talk about fighting against cancer, it's also a fight against smoking, and that can only be done in a partnership. So that's why we are a part of the Alliance for a Smoke-Free Society, together with the Foundation Against Cancer, the Belgian Cardiological League, and many others. But first of all, what do we demand from the Alliance? We asked for plain packaging. It came true. No smoking in cars with children. It came true. Less points of sale and ban on tobacco vending machines. Not done. But let's just take a focus on what we already achieved. We raised the minimum age to buy tobacco to 18 years. We have a total ban on the use of tobacco advertising at points of sale, which will be put into place at the 1st of January 2021. And we managed to get higher tobacco tax rates from 2021. And we hope the government will do the same for the following years as well. And as you can see, we still have a few points that need to be tackled. So why talk about human rights when it comes to tobacco control? Because they are, like Laurent said, human rights are inherent to all human beings. They are basic rights and freedoms that belong to every person from birth until death. And they apply regardless of your roots, religion, or life decisions. You see an example of the European Convention of Human Rights as an example, with the different articles: the right to life, prohibition of torture, and the right to respect for private and family life. So in conclusion, for us, demands for tobacco control measures can be seen as demands for human rights. And the European Convention of Human Rights can be used as an example. It can be called upon because it has priority above Belgian law or Flemish decrees. Difficulty is how to interpret it. You have the right to health of non-smokers, but you have the right to self-determination and privacy of the smoker. One of the examples we had in the past is one from Romania, and that it's Eleftheriadis, who was a prisoner who took action against smoking in prisons and won in the end. But the European Convention is not the only relevant document. You have the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. Here as well, you see an example of one of the articles where it is the improvement of all aspects of environmental and industrial hygiene, prevention, treatment, and control of epidemic, endemic, occupational, and other diseases, just to give a few examples. You also, other documents, for example, are the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, but it's not legally binding. You have the European Social Charter. You have the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, Convention on the Rights of the Child, and the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. When we take a closer look, in Belgium, we had let's say we have a few legal achievements. As you can see, a smoking ban in pubs, smoking in cars, selling tobacco to minors, compulsory plain packaging, and total ban on tobacco advertising. Let's start with the smoking ban in pubs and bars. When Belgium first introduced it, they had a smoking ban in the hospitality industry starting on the 1st of January 2010. But with an exception for drinking facilities. Let's just say pubs where they serve primarily drinks, and they had an exception until the 1st of July 2014. But our organization brought an action for annulment of these exceptions before the Constitutional Court for two reasons. One, discrimination of pub workers, because they were less protected when it comes to health versus workers in taverns or pubs where food is served. And otherwise, the exceptions to protect the small pubs do not contribute to the aim of the law, which was to protect people's health. So the court ruled in the end that we were right, referring to the European Convention of Human Rights, Article 8, and the European Social Charter, two articles, the right to a safe and healthy working conditions, and the right to the protection of health. The effect was the exceptions were declared void, and there was a total smoking ban in restaurants, pubs, and bars, regardless of the fact if they primarily served drinks or not. So now in Belgium, we have a total smoking ban in the hospitality sector. A few more legal achievements is the ban on smoking in cars when driving with children. And just recently, the age was raised from children aged until 16 to 18. Motivational part of the law, children are extra vulnerable to secondary smoke, the higher risk for respiratory diseases, restricting liberty of smoking in presence of children so they can grow up in a healthy environment. So the liberty of one can be limited where the liberty of another is endangered. And the fact that smoking in cars with children is still possible is an anomaly, and this anomaly should be tackled as soon as possible. And for this, we saw there was a large support of the population, 67% according to Parliament, but in fact 90% according to a survey conducted by our friends of the Foundation Against Cancer. Belgium was in fact the last country in the EU where you could buy tobacco at the age of 16 when it comes to selling tobacco to minors. And in 2019, the age was raised to 18 years. When it comes to motivational part of the law, as you can see here, young people are at risk. This is a graphic from the VAD pupil survey, where you can see that smoking increased again in 2017, 2018, when you take a look to the previous years. So this had to be tackled. And here you can see the smoking behavior by age, which clearly shows that young children are still at risk, and especially those between 17 and 18 years old. So if you ban tobacco selling to them, this will help in changing their behavior. Motivational part, so as I said, young people are at risk, and member states of the EU can go further than the TPD when it comes to protecting young people. And it is imperative that smoking among young people is discouraged in as many ways as possible. We are one of the European countries that introduced plain packaging for cigarettes, roll your own tobacco, bung tobacco, cigarette paper cases and filters. And as from 2021, only plain packaging will be on the market for these products. But as you can see, we tend to see right now that all products are, and that's a mistype, I think it's 2020. All packages now are plain. Format is green-brown color, only brand type and quantity can be mentioned in a standard font. Motivation of the minister in charge, standard packaging makes tobacco products less attractive, in particular for young people, and therefore less people are encouraged to start smoking and more smokers want to quit. And next year we will have our total ban on tobacco advertising. Laura, I still hope Germany will do the same thing. Belgium has a ban on tobacco until now has a ban on tobacco advertising, but with a few exceptions. You can still advertise the brand name of tobacco products on posters in tobacco shops and newspaper shops selling tobacco. And two, you can put it out in front of these shops. And as of 2021, these exceptions will disappear. Here you can see a few pictures of how tobacco advertising is done in Belgium up until now. Motivational part of the law. One, we had a lot of violations, 24%. Places where advertising is allowed are in general places where young people frequently come, because these places also offer candy, drinks, chips, etc. Advertising influences behavior, especially young people's behavior, and it makes tobacco look as a normal product. And young people have more favorable perception of smoking than adults. Another motivational part was FCTC, and 67% of the Belgian population is in favor of this advertising ban. And then we come to Beyond Law. I hope the video will be going great here. We have some, an action on smoking inside, but I'll show you the video.
Kurt, I think you have to take off your headset and switch on the sound.
Oh.
Yeah, maybe start from the beginning, the video.
Is this going better?
No, we still can't hear the sound. Can you hear the sound yourself when you're playing it?
I can hear it myself, but good thing it was subtitled. So this was an action we took.
There's subtitles, so it's okay. It's okay. We could read them. So, yeah.
This was an action on smoking inside, and that's one of the points we said is go beyond the law and also try to sensitize people on their smoking behavior, but in a positive way. And partly thanks to this campaign, in 10 years, the number of Flemish children exposed to smoke every day at home has dropped from 115,000 in 2008 to 36,000 in 2018. Another thing we do is try to create smoke-free environments. And And that's the thing we do in partnership with the members of the Alliance. And our goal is that every parent of a child born from 2019 and onwards should be able to raise his child in a smoke-free society. And how do we do that? As I said, create smoke-free environments, and this in partnership with our partners, but also villages, towns, and all other partners, so that environments become smoke-free, because seeing smoking makes you smoke. And the Convention on the Rights of the Children, children have the right to grow up in a smoke-free environment and have the right to be protected from tobacco addiction. And it's a positive project because everyone can help, even the smoker. The smokers can still smoke, but out of sight of the children. That's in fact our input we have in this action. So in conclusion, human rights can be used to tackle smoking and the health impact of smoking. First of all, by legislative initiative, by legal action, and by awareness campaigns, and they can be very effective. And there has to be a reasonable balance between the right to health of non-smokers versus the right to self-determination and privacy of smokers. This balance can shift, and we can make it shift, even outside of a legal framework by raising awareness, and then politics will follow. That's one of the things we see. And that's it from me. So here you have my contact info.
Thank you, Kurt. So again, as we heard from Kurt, we come to the same conclusion that all procedures against smoking or tobacco use will lead to the right to the health. So now our next presentation will be the invisible debt, tobacco, mental health, and human rights. People with several mental health disorders are more likely to smoke, often smoke more and die at much higher rates from tobacco-related diseases than the general population. The reasons for this are complex and under-researched. So due to the character of their diseases and the attached stigmatization, persons with mental health disorders have difficulties to raise their voice and get heard in social discourses. They are made invisible, and as a result, their increased death rate remain disgraded. Laura Graham will present and speak about this topic. Laura is a freelance human rights and tobacco control expert who works with non-governmental as well as intergovernmental organizations such as the Global Center for Good Governance and Tobacco Control and WHO Europe to support their research, campaigns, and advocacy. She is engaged in national and international process and networks, for example, the German Network for Children's Rights and Tobacco Control, and contributes to advocacy around of the WHO, FCTC, and the human rights treaties. In February 2020, she received the first prize of the ESTO Young Professional Awards of the Association of European Cancer League for her outstanding contribution to tobacco control and going beyond her immediate duties to contribute to the building tobacco-free Europe. Laura, please start the presentation.
Thank you for the kind introduction. Let me share my screen. Okay, I hope you can hear this, see this presentation. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so hello everyone. I will speak about mental health, tobacco, and human rights. And before I start, I need to say this is preliminary research. Hani persuaded me to present this because I had sent an abstract to the ENSP conference, but then due to COVID-19 and other things happening this year, I was not able to follow through this research. So I don't know as much about the topic as I wish I knew. And please do not cite me, but rather look into the references that I list at the end of the presentation. I will first talk about mental health in general, then give just some background information, and then give some information about mental health and tobacco, and how the tobacco industry is involved in this, and then about the human rights aspect of this topic. So at any one time in Europe, about 10% of the European population are affected by a mental health condition. So it is very likely that there are several people in this Zoom room now that are currently affected or have experienced any mental health condition in the past, including me. And we talk usually of common mental health disorders or conditions and other severe mental health conditions. Common mental health disorders are, for example, depression or anxiety, and they affect about 5 to 10% of the population. Severe mental health disorders such as psychotic disorders, schizophrenia, bipolar disorders are rather rare, that they affect only a small percentage of the population. It is estimated that smoking rates among people with mental health conditions are 2 to 4 times that of the general population.
Laura, I'm very sorry to interrupt you, but
yes.
I think you're not running the presentation in the full mode, because we see on the screen one slide from the beginning, slide 8.
Oh, okay, that's not good.
So maybe scroll to the beginning, and you should run it like you would, you know, put it full screen.
Let me just stop the share and do it again.
Otherwise, I think I have a copy. I can do it for you, but you'll have to tell me next slide.
Okay, let me just go back to this. Do you see it now? Do you see now the title?
Yes, it's perfect.
Okay, then there came the disclaimer. And sorry, so here are the facts again with the 10% of the population and so on. Do you see this now?
Yes, it's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so mental health and tobacco. That was the slide that I was talking about last. So it is estimated that people with mental health conditions are smoking 2 to 4 times, the smoking rates are 2 to 4 times that of the general population. And it is also seen that they usually smoke more on average than the general population. And there's also an estimation, and these are estimations, and I will talk about this later, the problem with these estimations, that people with any mental health condition die 5 to 10 years prematurely compared to the general population. And people with severe mental health conditions die 15 to 20 years early. When I first read that, I thought, okay, maybe it's about suicide numbers, things like that. But then I also read about facts that, like a US study estimates that half of people with depression, bipolar disorder, and schizophrenia die because of tobacco-related diseases. And so this is, I mean, it's extreme. Half of the people with a severe mental health condition die because of tobacco-related diseases, not because of other issues that are related to their mental health condition. And the reasons for this are complex. There is, for example, a perception of smoking as a stress reliever, which is of course not true and has been perpetuated by tobacco industry promotion. There is a lack of regulatory measures, so even countries with smoke-free legislation often exclude mental health institutions. There is a lack of cessation services. Tobacco dependence is often seen by health professionals as less urgent compared to other symptoms and therefore is not being treated. There is a perception that people with mental health disorders cannot or do not want to quit. There are comorbidities such as alcoholism, and then there is also oftentimes delayed diagnosis and treatment of cancer and other diseases. And I have titled this presentation "The Invisible Dead" because this is an issue that we usually do not talk about. It's also largely under-researched, but it affects a large number of people and we don't see them. We don't even know exactly how many they are. This has also something to do with the stigmatization of people with mental health conditions. Then some people, or it depends on the countries, but also many people with severe mental health conditions live in mental health facilities. They are segregated and isolated and therefore out of the view of the general population. There are also barriers inherent to mental health conditions. People affected by them have difficulties to raise their voice and get heard in societal discourses. For example, depression deprives you of all the energy needed to even get basic things done. So it's really difficult to fight for your rights. And I think society can do better and eliminate environmental barriers such as isolation and disregarding people's capabilities to speak up for their rights or to stop smoking also. The tobacco industry, of course, has exploited this topic also. There's this false perception that smoking helps to relieve stress, and this was used and promoted by the tobacco industry for decades. So this is, for example, a Camel ad from 1955, and it says it's a psychological fact. Pleasure helps your disposition, and the best thing to do is to smoke the most pleasurable giving cigarette, which is Camel. The tobacco industry has also cultivated ties to organizations serving homeless and mentally ill people, and they still do. I know of several organizations in Germany receiving donations from the tobacco industry. And they have donated money and cigarettes because then you promote your brands at the same time. And this promotes the perception that homeless or mentally ill people should not be encouraged to quit smoking because cigarettes are all that they have left. The industry also funded research that supported the hypothesis that people with mental health conditions smoke to lessen symptoms. And in contrast, studies indicate that smoking may cause depression, anxiety, and other disorders, or that smoking and mental health conditions influence each other. The industry also tried to exploit people with mental health conditions to weaken evidence for the link between lung cancer and smoking. In this 1982 internal memo by Philip Morris, it reads, as indicated in the attachments, a couple of English doctors have suggested that lung cancer is extremely rare in heavy smoking schizophrenics, an obvious conflict of prevailing theories on the relationship of cigarette smoking to lung cancer. In reality, people with schizophrenia at that time were not living long enough to develop lung cancer, and they often lived in mental health facilities that made it less likely to detect cancer. This brings me to the human rights background of this whole story. Human rights in general, of course, apply to people with mental health conditions too. Laurent and Kurt mentioned, for example, the human right to life and to health. There's also the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, and this covers mental health conditions too. I will only focus on this convention. It seems obvious to talk about the human right to life when it comes to tobacco, and also the human right to health. But combined with the non-discrimination principle and the extreme statistics that I mentioned a few moments ago, it has more specific implications. Article 10 of the CRPD emphasizes that persons with disabilities have an inherent right to life on an equal basis with others. So a government's failure to address the higher morbidity and mortality rates of people with mental health conditions is a clear violation of human rights. People with mental health conditions also have a right to an adequate standard of living, which also includes smoke-free mental health facilities. In many countries, as I mentioned before, mental health facilities are not smoke-free, creating an environment in which people are exposed to secondhand smoke, and people trying to stop smoking are constantly seeing cigarettes around them. The CRPD also contains 2 articles that are kind of exceptional, I think. Article 8 on awareness raising is not directed at people with disabilities, but mainly towards the public or public health professionals or the public in general. It says that parties must undertake awareness raising of the capabilities and contributions of persons with disabilities. And this also includes awareness raising on the fact that people with mental health conditions are able to quit smoking and want to quit smoking. And then there's also Article 31 specifically that states that parties undertake to collect appropriate information to implement the rights of the convention. And this brings me to my conclusions, which is, first of all, we need more data and more research. The statistics that I cited were largely based on US American studies, but how does it look like in Europe or other regions in the world? What is exactly needed to decrease smoking rates and mortality among people with mental health conditions? There are some studies around this, but we need to implement these programs, tobacco prevention programs that are tailored towards people with mental health conditions, tobacco cessation programs that are tailored towards people with mental health conditions. And we need to do more research about this. And also, again, raise awareness of the public, of political decision makers, health staff, that people with mental health conditions are able to quit, and tobacco dependence should be treated with more urgency. The tobacco endgame means to leave no one behind. So even if we see declining smoking rates in some countries, how does it look like in the population that is affected by mental health conditions? And if it is not decreasing in this population, there's urgent need to address this. So I mentioned some references that I used. I can send you the list if you send me a message. I would especially recommend to read Yvette van der Eyck's paper, The Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities as a Tobacco Control Tool in the Mental Health Setting, and also the World Health Organization Tobacco Use and Mental Health Conditions Policy Brief. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Laura. It's very interesting. Again, we come that need more implementation for tobacco control policies to be able to achieve the right to health for people. Our next presentation is on a 3-year project of the French Alliance Against Tobacco to normalize tobacco use. Professor Luc Jusseran will present, and Professor Luc is the president of the Alliance Against Tobacco and the professor of public health at the University of Versailles, and head of the Public Health and Epidemiology Department of the Paris I cannot pronounce it well, but it's West Hospital Group. He's also Vice President of the French Public Health Society, former ministerial advisor. He has been involved in the fight against smoking for many years. And Professor Louis is newly elected as ENSP board member. Professor Luke, please, you can start the presentation.
Thank you. I first share my screen and then
yes, please.
I will start it. Okay. Okay. Can you see it and hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Okay. So I will present you very quickly. The new program that we developed at the French Alliance against tobacco, and it's the tobacco denormalization program, and human rights is one part of the program, but I will present you the whole program. Just a few words about the Alliance. So it's a federation of 23 NGOs, non-profit organization, and okay, from very big one, national one, to very small and local one. And just for to think about it, that the act is means Alliance contre le tabac in French. It's French Alliance against tobacco, but act is means act now is a new acronym for us. So we federate the voice of different members, act as a reference issuer to opinion leaders, we play a decisive role in public health debate to strengthen tobacco control measures and enforce existing ones, inform the general public of the tobacco industry harm through denormalization program. What we the program we run now, and we want to contribute to the emergence of the first tobacco-free generation by 2032. So what denormalized means? To denormalize tobacco is to change its symbolic meaning. It has been shown that health education, even if necessary, cannot on its own manage all the multiple factors that discourage smoking behavior. I just put here the curve of the French prevalence of tobacco, and that you see for the last years there is some very good evolution. But in fact, now we have to do more than just health education. And it's why we think that denormalization is the next step. So we have to denormalize because the industry has been and is still working through a circumvention to standardize its tobacco products since the early 20th century, and to standardize tobacco products through advertising campaign, product placement, and public relation campaigns, aim all the time at associating its product with an enviable status to a social accepted practice, if not desirable. So that's what we have yesterday for advertisement, and that we have yesterday for movie. But today, everything changed, but nothing changed. Just take a look to this new advertisement in France, just at the French level. Everything's changed because there's no more cigarettes, but you can see or imagine a cigarette. So cigarettes are still here, and that's still linked to a very good picture and very good feeling about cigarettes. So that's why nothing changed, in fact. And it's the same at the cinema, because here we are very famous movies or Netflix series in France. And cigarettes is still here all the time. And here you see the cigarette now, and it's not just you not just to have to imagine it. It's here. So it's why nothing changed for us, and it's why we need to change the image of tobacco in France. It's why it's necessary. So tobacco is still a legal product. Tobacco industry is a legal industry, and they are selling a legal product with and through careful misinformation strategy. So to complement public health prevention actions targeting tobacco users, that may sometimes be perceived guilt-inducing. That's a way and a problem in France, because very frequently smokers are not feel very comfortable with prevention in France. And it's important to link the harms of tobacco directly to the industry that produces them. So denormalize tobacco and its industry. It means for us assign responsibility for the tobacco epidemic to the tobacco industry and not to the individual, and challenging the ethics of this industry. So we denormalize tobacco through, and we already started through denormalization campaigns, address the action and product of the tobacco industry, and do not stigmatize smokers to let them change behavior. And denormalize tobacco and its industry also means to change the image of tobacco control actors, who are often perceived in France as condigenists, repressive, etc. We do not have in France a very good picture, a very good image. So we have to change a lot of things, and for us it's the first step, and it's the beginning to change the image of tobacco control actors in France. We already started with our new logo that we have here on this presentation here. So we also want to targeting younger generation, in particular the alpha generation. I don't know if you know this name, but in France it's called alpha generation. It's the 10 years and less, and it's the future tobacco-free generation. So it's our target is this generation. Of course, the generation Z or the millennials are still in the target, but the real target is the alpha generation, and we hope to get less than 5% smoking prevalence among them by 2030. And we want to denormalize because it works. We have several examples about that with California Proposition 99, and it works very good. The True Initiative in the United States too, and it's still the denormalization program, and it also works very good, because they started in the early 2000s around 23% of prevalence among the youth, and now they are around only 4%. So that's very far from the 25% we have for this age group in France. So in summary, the denormalization of tobacco industry is the inverse of the tobacco industry standardization strategy that ran for many years. A communication strategy to change the social perception of tobacco and strengthen its control, informing the general public and regulators about the role of tobacco industry as a responsible of the tobacco epidemic, and demonstrate that tobacco industry is neither normal or legitimate. So that's the first step. So now, what is the program that we launched the last week? In fact, we launched it officially with the first result to produce last week. So it's a project. In fact it's a 5-year project funded by the French government and a specific fund. It's addiction control fund that we applied for it, and then we earned two. We have 2 grants for a total amount of 5.7 million of euros. And then at the beginning it was a project, and then now we change our mind and we change it as a program with different aspects and different declinations. So that's a strong evolution for us now. And then I will show you what we did already. So how, by using 2 levers, enabling permanent decrease of smoking prevalence in France. First, act in priority on tobacco demand by using all levers of communication and action to change the social perception of tobacco in France. And secondly, act in a second step on tobacco products offer advocacy with regulators, amplified by media coverage and driven by public opinion to strengthen tobacco control measures. So the structure of this program is very ambitious program. that we use 3 different pillars. The first is our expect member of the ACT. The second one is so international expert partner tools with Ash, with Laurent, and then with Tobacco Free Portfolio. I don't know if you know this this NGO is the Australian one, and they are specialized on the financial aspect of tobacco. And we also have a contact with NGO members out of tobacco control, but experts of different aspects of tobacco, like the Surfer Foundation for environmental protection, or les Restos du Cœur, or Oxfam, more specialized to fight the precociousness. So we have this different level of expertise. And we also have support from service provider for professional. We want to have a very professional action. So we have the support of different service providers selected by Call of Thunder. We have one for public press and public affairs strategy. We have one for we publish a quarterly national survey on tobacco perception. So we have a specific service provider about that. We also have a production provider for production audiovisual content for short video that we plan to publish numerous short video. And I just put here a picture of our first video here. And we want to develop 4 work stream. The first is the renew the storytelling of tobacco control in France with new logo, new topics. I will just say a word about this new topics. Because as I mentioned, the tobacco control in France has a very, very bad image, and we have to change that, because if we do not change this image, who wants to help us, or who wants to be involved in tobacco control except the small group that we are right now? So we have to increase our positive image, and then to put with us some opinion leaders, some journalists, etc. So it's the first step for us. So we want to increase awareness and credibility of stakeholders with opinion leaders. So we need them, and then we have to change our image before to try to have them and to get them with us, to develop a network of spokespersons in support of the cause, same logical, and communicate to the general public with social networks and events like press conference, etc. And we did the first one last week. So we used this different this program. We have denormalization campaign with human rights, with environment, about environment. These are new topics at the French level: human rights, environment, women and tobacco and finance, etc. We have several others, and that's the very new aspect for us in France. And we have different levels, with direct media campaign, with indirect via press relation, via institutional relation, via public relation. And we started, and our first results are quite good. So we have denormalization campaign, and we want to develop a well-established network of opinion leaders supporting our cause, by the organization of informal meetings with journalists. We have some good contacts in this way. The development of decision maker networks for the generation to 2032, and we want to develop a corporate networks of companies of tobacco for tobacco-free economy. And then with this objective, we have 3 communication levers, via indirect via press relation, indirect via institutional relation too, and the indirect via public relation, with the close with contact with company and personalities. So our program we want to have a more fluid operational construction around campaign, renewing the approach of the tobacco control by using topics that are quite unknown at the general public level, and we want to develop a pool of spokesperson or influencer. And human rights, of course, are one of the key aspects of our coming campaigns. And the benefits and the benefits enabled to standardize an action method and professionalization in the elaboration of the campaign, and then enables a faster campaign development, has easier media coverage of this topic. We want to decline this different campaign and method, focusing each time on a new topic. So we have these 4 steps to decline this. We have 4 steps to decline the campaign. The first one is the framing work, broad guidelines, human and material resources, development of partnership with NGO experts on the topic, development of campaign brief or choice of the approach of a specific topic, etc. That means that we have this different step to develop each time the program in the same way, with focusing on a new topic each time. So that's we hope to go faster in for developing each new campaign. And this is the agenda for the coming years about the different topic we have. We launched last week the first one with the real cost of tobacco, and with the objective of to increase the price of cigarettes in France. The next one will be the women and tobacco, and then we will have different campaign, and we have the first one of around the children rights, focusing on the human rights, and we also have another one with precarity and human rights. So that, and all the time we put some human rights in each of the campaign, even if it's not the real target of this specific campaign. And we also have, and what that is very important for us, a specific one around the election in France in 2022. Okay, and we also have the last one with tobacco-free sports that we hope to get some others. And then we launch. Sorry, the movies doesn't work on my computer. I tried, but I don't understand why. And I put here the link, and then you can check this. This campaign is the real cost of tobacco in France, because these figures are really unknown in France. And then when we launched this campaign last week with the press conference, and then and the webinar, that it was good, and we have very good feedback from the press, with several articles at the national level, in big journal, in big newspaper in France. So that was very good, and we also have an interview on the radio, and then the specific topics on radio with our figures. So that was the very good aspect. So it's the first one, and then we will launch one. We will launch one new campaign every 3 or 4 months. So just in conclusion, denormalizing tobacco in France, it's a new and complementary path to the action conducted by the government. That's very important. We are not. We work with the French government. We work with the Ministry of Health. We work with the Public Health Agency very closely, so that it's not a campaign without any link with the French reality. It's linked to the French politics against tobacco in France. It's a public health necessary to fight with the same weapons against all the whole powerful industry in France, and it's one of the last opportunity to get the first tobacco-free generation in 2032. Okay, thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Louis. So actually, any campaign fighting smoking or tobacco control is an instrument for human rights and tobacco control topic. Well, we have a question here for all our respected speakers. So what do you think, what is holding governments from implementation tobacco control policies, especially the has direct link with human rights? The thing is that in developing country, the human rights topic is very sensitive, even if it is related just to health side. But in developed country, it is the different understanding of human rights and the relation to human rights issues. So what is holding governments from implement tobacco control policies?
I'll just give a start, but it seems like the biggest obstacle to implementation of policies at country level, it seems like what we hear time and again at the COPs is industry interference. That's what we hear from governments. Oh, sorry about that. I shut the video for a while. So it seems like one of the biggest obstacles is really industry interference. This being said, you're right that in some countries and developing countries, there's sometimes concern that a human rights platform is used to beat up on them a little bit, to kind of like, you know, it's like they view it as high-income countries taking a little bit of a paternalistic approach or colonialist approach. And I think the way to frame it is that actually the FCTC is a tool to help low-income developing countries achieve human rights objectives. By implementing the FCTC, low-income countries basically can kill two birds with one stone, so to speak. They help achieve both health objectives, the FCTC objectives, but also human rights and development objectives. And I think a human rights-based approach can also help demonstrate and highlight industry interference at country level. And so, for example, I think it would be very helpful for a low-income country, for NGOs, if they see tobacco industry interfering in the implementation of public health policies, whatever they are, to use that as a platform to denounce that.
I would also add that from my perception, the interesting view is in the Western part of the world, like in Europe, I have heard about human rights are mostly perceived as political rights, like freedom of speech, things like that. And then I've heard from people in developing countries that oftentimes in their constitutions there's a human right to health or a human right to kind of economic and social rights, development, things like that. So countries in developing countries, I think, are oftentimes more interested in the health and social rights, and I think we should emphasize this more. And I mean, they had the idea to put to put health rights in their constitutions, which other countries didn't. So it's their own idea.
Thank you, Laurent and Laura.
With the program that when we focus on kids for the first campaign about human rights, that we will put the focus on kids in France, but not only, because I think it's very important to say a word, and a big word, about what happened in a developing country with the agriculture, about tobacco and kids in the field, etc. So that's a big point for I think for human rights and kids human rights and it's not happening in Europe. In Europe for kids there is law against the work, etc. But in developing countries it's quite different. And then we have to mention this and then to put that in mind to everyone who's smoking in France.
Well, thank you. Yeah. Okay, so I think we still have 10 minutes. If anyone from our participants would like to make an intervention or to ask question, just let us know so we can unmute you to give your intervention or your questions.
And Hani, I'm noticing a question from Laura Grain to Loic. on whether whether there will be human rights reporting in France. And as a partner of this project, and Loic, maybe you can add to this, but yes, indeed, one of the, and Ash is a partner in that project, and our role is to work with ICESR and other in France to develop tobacco-centric parallel reports. The aim right now is particularly around the Convention on Rights of the Child, the CEDAW, and UPR, and yes, to develop 3 parallel reports around this. I'm also interested in looking at the business plan, the French plan, to live up to the guiding principles on business and human rights. Something that I've not looked at in the past, but I think it could be an interesting thing to look at. How can we connect those two?
Thank you, Laurent.
Can I say something?
Yes, Larissa, please.
Hi, everybody. I have to say this was probably the best of all the seminars that I attended. It really spoke to me because we have an NGO. I'm from Amman, Jordan. It's called Tobacco-Free Jordan, actually. And we primarily work with kids. We've been working for 10 years now. And as Laura said, we do have many laws, but sadly, all of our laws are only on paper and put in the shelf. Nobody actually really cares about these things. We have the best regulations. We have an excellent health law that prevents the smoking, that protects children, but it's only on paper. We suffer a lot. We're working, we're trying to denormalize the smoking with children. We talk to children as young as 4 and 5 years in order to explain to them secondhand smoking. We produced a children's book in both Arabic and English. We made license stickers and we distribute them at schools to give a positive picture for non-smoking. We always enforce the positive side of being a non-smoker and not being exposed to secondhand smoke. One of the main things that we always ask the kids is, how do you feel when somebody smokes next to you? This is usually our conversation opener, and we use their sentences then later on when we talk about what happened or when we want to explain how the children feel. And I've noticed that most adults don't even think about what they are doing to their children when they smoke around them. So I really love what everybody's doing. I've taken some ideas, and please feel free to log in into our Facebook page. It's in Arabic, it's called Lalit Tatrin. It's spelled in English. We have the sign of the Arabic calligraphy of no, with the tobacco smoke coming out of it. We actually were awarded for our logo design. And we have lots of positive material on it. Maybe anybody can benefit from it. You're almost welcome to it. And I really, really appreciate what everybody's doing. And thank you for the positive energy that I found here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Larissa. Thank you very much. So, anybody else would like to say something?
Just to comment on Larissa's just a statement that she said, and I thought it was interesting. So in a place, and we see that often, so a country often, unfortunately sometimes too often, but where a country does implement good policy, but the enforcement is really, really the issue. So they have the issue of industry interference and then lack of enforcement or lack of resources. And I think this is where the human rights-based approach can be helpful, because on one side, the government has done a good thing. It's implemented, it's passed a law, but then the enforcement is a problem. So you can use the reporting that, so for example, I know that Jordan, I was just now looking quickly, I don't know what it's due to report, but in 2013 was the last, I don't know exactly when it was, but I mean, 18 was the last time I think Jordan reported to the Universal Periodic Review of the Human Rights Council. So that assumes that probably around 2022, it will be due to report again. So that could be an opportunity to submit a formal report and show that despite good laws, implementation remains an issue, and implementation is to be strengthened to protect the right of health to health of Jordanian citizens. And it can be framed, it doesn't have to be a punitive thing. It could be framed in a positive way, say, you know, it's doing what it can, but because of lack of resources, it's not done. A problem we have in civil society and NGOs is we don't use those enough, those reports. And one of the problems, I think, is often not adequate resources for people to have the time to do that. But if it's something you can integrate in your plan, I think it might be helpful.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Laurent. So we are coming to the end of our session today. So a couple of minutes. Just I would like to remind you that we have tomorrow joint webinar with tobacco-free kids on using point-of-sale investigations to successful advanced TAPS policy. It will start, I think most of you have already got received the invitations. Also, the day after tomorrow, we have the second part of the novel tobacco products. Many interesting topics will be discussed. So we hope we will see you also tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. Thank you very much, our respected speakers, and thank you very much, our participants, for being with us today. So we hope that we will see you soon on our other webinars. Thank you very much, and all have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.